Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into a single, really potent resource today: aware leadership, understanding our mind insights.
Yeah, and it's not your typical checklist or, step-by-step guide.
No, definitely not. It feels more like an invitation, really, an exploration of principles for leading more effectively, more skillfully.
And sustainably, too.
Yeah.
The core idea, I think, is that a lot of the recurring headaches leaders face, conflict, stress, maybe poor calls, they often aren't just external issues.
Right, they stem from inside.
Exactly. From unskillful patterns, ways of thinking and reacting that we might not even be fully aware of. But the flip side is that means the power to change things is also internal. It's within us.
I like that framing. Leadership isn't just about managing what's out there, it's also about skillfully navigating your own mind.
That's the essence of it.
So our mission here is to really unpack the most vital insights, the practical takeaways from this source, and maybe create a bit of a map for your own leadership journey as you listen. Okay, let's get into it.
Where does it start?
Well, it kicks off with a pretty deep question, actually. Who are you, really?
Right away, it pushes past the easy answers.
Totally. It challenges that idea that you are just your job title or your last big win or even, the anger or excitement you're feeling right now. It hints there's something more fundamental underneath all that.
And to help us explore that deeper self, it lays out these 5 foundations of human experience. Think of them as the sort of building blocks of our reality, moment to moment.
Okay, 5 foundations. What are they?
So first is form. That's your physical body, your senses, sight, sound, touch, everything.
Got it. Physical being.
Then feeling. This is the basic tone, pleasant, unpleasant, or just neutral that comes with any experience.
Just the raw sensation quality.
Okay. Third is perception. How you recognize and label things, seeing a shape and knowing that's a chair.
Interpretation starts there.
Right. Fourth are mental formations. This is a big one. It includes intentions, habits, impulses, biases, basically, our mental conditioning.
The drivers behind our actions.
And finally, consciousness. Just the basic knowing, the awareness that's present through all the other experiences.
Okay, so form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, the ingredients. But how does knowing these specifically help me lead better?
Well, think about it. If you truly grasp that a feeling like frustration is just a temporary state, like a cloud passing.
Ah, the cloud analogy from the source.
Exactly. You're the sky, not the cloud. If you see that, you're less likely to get completely hijacked by that frustration. Or understanding that perception is your interpretation, not objective reality.
Makes you less defensive about feedback, maybe?
Yes. Or more open to someone else's viewpoint because you realize they're just interpreting differently based on their foundations.
Yeah.
It builds resilience, ethical grounding, empathy, because you see you're more than any single thought or feeling.
That really lands. You're the awareness behind the stress, not just the stress itself.
Precisely. And building on that, the source then maps out how our mind actually processes stuff. It's like a constant 6-step flow.
Okay, an internal processing model. Walk us through it.
It starts, simply enough, with sensory input. Anything coming in sights, sounds, even internal stuff like your heart beating faster.
Step 1, data in.
Step 2, initial awareness. Just registering that input, like, oh, a sound.
Noticing it exists.
Then step 3, cognitive elaboration. This is where your mind really jumps in. Interpreting, labeling, judging based on past experiences, biases.
Okay, so this is the critical interpretation stage where our history shapes meaning.
Exactly. And that interpretation often sparks step 4, an action tendency, an urge, an impulse to react or respond in some way.
The push to do something.
Right. Step 5 is cognitive traces,
Yeah.
the residue, the memory, the feeling that lingers afterwards.
The after effect.
And all this happens within step 6, continuous consciousness. This is like the operating system, the ongoing awareness that links experiences, filters reality, and shapes your whole perspective.
Okay, so consciousness is the backdrop, the thread tying it all together, and it's guided by attention.
Yeah, attention and mindfulness are key here. What's really interesting is seeing this play out. Like the example of Sarah, the project manager. She hears a hesitant tone in a team member's voice.
Sensory input.
Right. She notices it, initial awareness, but then her mind elaborates. Sounds like uncertainty, maybe a problem. Cognitive elaboration.
Her interpretation kicks in.
Which leads to an action tendency. I should probably ask about that. She does. And uncovers a hidden issue. Proactive leadership based on that internal process.
She didn't just dismiss the tone, her awareness led to action.
Exactly. Or think about Emma. She notices her own body's slouched posture, talking fast before a big meeting.
Internal sensory input. embodied awareness.
Yes. Her cognitive elaboration is, this is anxiety. Recognizing that, her action tendency isn't to ignore it, but to consciously shift, stand tall, or breathe deeper.
A leadership response to her own internal state.
Right. It changes how she shows up. And one more, Alex. He hears a critique from a colleague, and his immediate cognitive elaboration is, he's resisting my idea. Maybe a past pattern triggers that.
A defensive interpretation.
But because he's working on awareness, he catches it. He pauses. He separates the input, the words, from his initial story, resistance. He considers it differently, realizes it's a valid point, and it actually improves the plan and builds trust.
Wow. So understanding this process lets you intervene to consciously choose your response instead of just reacting automatically.
That's the whole point. The first absolutely crucial step for you as a leader is just becoming aware of this machinery, the foundations, this 6-step flow, seeing how you perceive, how you interpret, how you tend to react. Without that awareness, trying to change behaviors like, well, fighting shadows.
And that awareness, that's where mindfulness comes in. The source really emphasizes this as the core tool, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Mindfulness is presented as the essential practice for aware leadership. At its core, it's about two things: presence and non-judgmental awareness.
Presence meaning really being here.
Yeah, giving your full attention to whatever's happening right now, the meeting, the person speaking, the task at hand, not mentally drifting or checking your phone.
And the non-judgmental awareness part.
That's about observing your own inner world, thoughts, feelings, sensations as they come and go, without immediately labeling them as good or bad or getting tangled up with them, just noticing.
Like watching those clouds again. Okay, what are the practical payoffs for a leader doing this?
Oh, they're significant. First off, it's the bedrock of emotional intelligence. Mindfulness lets you spot your own emotions as they bubble up. You see how they might be coloring your judgment or how you're about to interact.
So you understand yourself better in the moment.
Right. And that self-awareness naturally makes you more attuned to others' emotions. You start to pick up on cues better, leading to more empathy. Both parts of EI, self-awareness and social awareness, get a boost.
Makes sense. It helps you read yourself in the room.
Exactly. The source mentions Lisa, noticing a junior team member being quiet. Because she's practiced this awareness, she senses it might be uncertainty, offers support, and boom, a valuable idea comes out that might have stayed hidden.
Clear link between her inner practice and a team outcome.
Definitely. Then there's resilience and stress management. When you can observe difficult thoughts or feelings without getting totally consumed, setbacks feel less personal. Challenges become, well, data. Opportunities to learn, adapt. It builds that inner strength.
Resilience is growth, not just bouncing back.
You got it. And this presence directly impacts decision-making. Being mindful means you're less likely to make purely reactive, impulsive choices. The source highlights a great tool, the PPRE practice.
PPP, what's that?
Pause, just stop before reacting. Reflect calmly, check in with your thoughts, feelings, the facts. Engage, consider options thoughtfully. Proceed, then act consciously.
Simple but powerful. It forces a gap between stimulus and response.
It does. There's Emily, facing a project delay. Instead of reacting with frustration, she uses that pause, acknowledges the feeling, then makes a calm plan. Or David, facing a tough conversation, pauses to center himself first, leading with empathy, building trust instead of conflict.
Those pauses clearly change everything.
They really can.
Yeah.
And the source suggests ways to build this muscle. Mindful listening, maybe keeping an emotion diary, simple breathing exercises, even short meditation sessions, cultivating compassionate presence.
It's not just about personal benefit, though, is it? The source talks about team impact.
Yeah, that's a key point. It scales up. When leaders practice this, it can foster a culture of mindfulness. Think mindful meetings, better listening. It creates an environment of mutual understanding, respect, which boosts creativity, productivity, well-being for everyone.
So it can shift the whole organizational climate.
It really can. And personally, for you, this practice helps uncover those emotional blind spots. You know, the hidden biases, the knee-jerk reactions you don't even realize you have. Mindfulness, maybe combined with journaling or getting feedback, shines a light on those patterns.
Leading to more balanced choices, more empathy.
Exactly. And communication, too. Mindful communication is huge. Really listening without planning your rebuttal, empathetic listening. And speaking consciously aware of your words, your tone, their impact. David's case showed how that transforms a crisis.
Okay, so mindfulness is the key tool. But what exactly are we working with when we're being mindful? What's inside?
Right, that takes us deeper into the source's breakdown of mental factors. These are like the dynamic components shaping our experience from moment to moment.
Building blocks of the inner world. Okay.
Yeah. There are universal mental factors things always present, like contact, sensory input hitting the senses, attention, feeling, perception, intention, basic stuff.
The background constant.
Kind of. Then there are determining mental factors. These are powerful levers you can actually cultivate. Things like determination, mindfulness itself, concentration, insight. These help you steer your experience.
So universal ones are just there, determining ones you can actively work with.
That's a good way to put it. Think of Priya again. She hears the quiet tone, contact. Her attention focuses. This feeds perception. Sounds hesitant. This might activate intention and determination. I should ask why. Demonstrating insight. See how they chain together.
Yeah, I can see the flow in an interaction.
But crucially, the source is very realistic. It highlights the challenging mental patterns that often trip us up as leaders.
The stuff that gets in the way.
Exactly. It groups them. Primary ones like ignorance, craving, aversion, arrogance. Secondary amplifying ones like anger, jealousy. And then prominent ones, the ones we might notice more easily.
What falls under prominent?
Things like restlessness, mind jumping everywhere. Drowsiness or mental fog. Lack of discernment, fuzzy thinking. Laziness, fear, anxiety. The source is clear. These patterns undermine focus, confidence, action, judgment. They stall progress.
That list sounds like a direct recipe for ineffective leadership.
Pretty much. The Elena example is stark. Critical project, she's feeling restless, drowsy amidst deadlines, lack of discernment leads to errors, laziness means delays, fear holds her back. It's a cascade effect impacting the whole team.
Ouch. So just knowing they exist isn't enough. How do you tackle them, according to the source?
It links them directly to cultivating the positive, skillful factors as antidotes. For Elena, the strategy would be use concentration to fight restlessness, drowsiness. Develop insight to sharpen discernment. Apply determination against laziness and fear.
Actively counteracting the negative with the positive.
Precisely. It also mentions context-dependent ones like regret, which can be useful or not depending. The main point is recognizing all these patterns, the helpful, the challenging, the context-dependent, and learning to work with them consciously. That's the path to transformation.
Okay, so it's not just damage control. It's about actively building the positive side, cultivating skillful qualities.
Exactly. Aware leadership isn't just about avoiding pitfalls, it's proactive. The source describes building a skillful mind as a four-step process. Prevent the negative from arising, let go of it when it does, cultivate the positive, and maintain the positive.
Like tending an inner garden. Pulling weeds, planting flowers.
That's a perfect analogy. And it spotlights four really key positive qualities, building on those foundations like feeling and consciousness, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity.
Okay, break those down quickly. Loving kindness is wishing well for others.
Yes. Compassion is feeling concern when others suffer. Sympathetic joy is genuinely feeling happy for others' successes. And equanimity is that inner balance, staying calm and steady when things get bumpy.
Got it. And these are practices, not just nice ideas.
Absolutely active practices. Think about Alex during that stressful deadline. He practices loving kindness by actively supporting a teammate who's struggling. Compassion by truly empathizing with the team's stress. Sympathetic joy by genuinely celebrating a small win together. And equanimity by staying centered himself, despite the pressure.
Seeing it applied like that makes it feel very grounded, very relevant to leadership challenges.
It is. And the Force mentions others too. Drive and intrinsic joy finding energy in the work itself. Morality and truth. Ethical grounding. Flexibility and resilience, obviously crucial. Empathetic connection, building those strong bonds. Authentic leadership, walking the talk. Gratitude. And critically, balancing self-care and service.
Wow, quite a list. The key being
that none of these are fixed traits you either have or don't. They are skills, habits, things you can cultivate intentionally through practice.
Which leads right back to the core message underlying this whole thing. Becoming an aware leader isn't like reaching a finish line.
Definitely not. It's framed as a continuous journey. Lifelong self-discovery, growth, conscious evolution. It talks about self-realization, not in some mystical sense, but really understanding your authentic self more deeply.
Which then fuels empathy and resilience?
Exactly. The inner work directly supports the outer capabilities. And it stresses how personal and professional growth are tied together. You can't really separate them. Mindful practices help keep those paths aligned, learning from everything, especially the tough stuff, The setbacks, reflecting and integrating those lessons is key.
Like the example of Michael, the executive whose drive was hurting his team.
Right. He was result-focused, but lacked connection. The source shows how committing to practices, meditation, journaling over time, genuinely shifted his self-awareness, his emotional intelligence.
It wasn't overnight.
No, it was sustained effort. But it profoundly changed his empathy and, consequently, his team's dynamics and performance. His resilience grew too, managing stress, shifting perspective, regulating emotions, all cultivated through that ongoing practice.
It really highlights how consistent inner work translates into real-world leadership impact.
It does. It's about making these things mindfulness, self-awareness, daily habits, not just tools you pull out in a crisis.
And the source is quite practical throughout, offering ways to actually do this, right?
Yeah, it's woven throughout. Specific exercises you can try. Embodied awareness, just noticing physical sensations. Mindful breathing breaks, maybe an emotion diary or journaling. Using that P-repeat practice for decisions. Doing loving kindness reflections. Actively asking for feedback. Scenario planning with awareness. Setting boundaries for self-care.
A full toolkit, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And presented not as rigid rules, but as adaptable tools for your specific situation, wherever you are on your journey.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into understanding our mind. The big takeaway for me is how powerfully it argues that truly effective leadership really does start inside.
Yeah, becoming aware of our own, basic human operating system.
Yeah.
The foundations, the processes, the patterns, both tricky and skillful.
Yeah.
That awareness is what allows us to lead ourselves first and then others much more effectively.
It really reframes things often dismissed as soft skills. Mindfulness, self-awareness, compassion as absolutely fundamental tools. Tools for navigating complexity or building trust for actually driving meaningful change.
And it's clear it's not a quick fix. It's presented as a continuous path. Requires patience, self-compassion, and just commitment to the practice. It's about evolving consciously as a leader and really as a human being.
Which leaves us with a really important question to reflect on. If leadership effectiveness is so deeply connected to understanding and managing our inner world, what might be the greatest emotional blind spot or maybe challenging mental pattern that you need to explore on your own leadership journey right now?